The cold wind of Baltimore blew through the empty streets like a memory that refused to be forgotten. Lisa Herman walked with slow, tired steps, her arms tightly wrapped around her 4-year-old son Matthew. It was 3:47 a.m. Her cheeks were still wet from the tears she had tried to dry hours before, and her soul carried bruises far deeper than the purple ones hidden beneath the sleeves of her jacket. She had left their apartment, if it could be called that, after William once again lost control. The shouting, the accusations, the slaps. But this time something in her had snapped. Lisa looked down at Matthew sleeping in her arms and swore to him and to herself, never again. She wasn't just escaping a man. She was running toward dignity, toward a future that didn't smell like beer and blood. The Privilege Hotel in downtown Baltimore shimmered under the neon signs, a 5-star illusion in a city full of ghosts. Lisa entered through the back door, as always, unnoticed, invisible. She placed Matthew gently on a folded blanket in the corner of the lobby behind the marble column. He stirred but didn't wake. She kissed his forehead, tightened the hoodie around his little body, and grabbed the mop. The scent of citrus disinfectant filled the empty hall, masking the scent of despair that clung to her skin. She moved like someone who no longer feared fatigue. What she feared was failing. She needed that job more than she needed rest. And she cleaned with the precision of someone desperate to rewrite her story, one tile at a time. What Lisa didn't know was that at that very moment, a man stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, watching her every move with unusual attention. Gabriel Hawkins, owner of the Privilege Hotel Group, rarely slept and often made unannounced visits to observe the reality behind the polished smiles of his staff. He carried the reputation of being severe, almost ruthless, and yet there was something in his silence now, a weight, a memory. He saw the small body of the boy curled up under a hotel blanket, his thumb in his mouth, his world quiet in the middle of luxury. For a few seconds, Gabriel couldn't breathe. It was like looking into a mirror from 30 years ago. He had been that boy once. Hungry, cold, watching his mother scrub floors in silence, hiding bruises and pain behind exhausted smiles. Gabriel slowly approached, coffee cup in hand. "Excuse me," he said, voice firm though not unkind. "What is that child doing here?" Lisa froze. She looked at Matthew, then at the man. Her throat tightened. "I had no one to leave him with. I know it's not allowed, but I couldn't miss work." Her voice broke. Gabriel frowned. "This is a hotel lobby, not a daycare," he said. Lisa lowered her head. She didn't expect understanding, just hoped to not be fired. But the silence that followed stretched painfully. Gabriel didn't say another word. He turned and walked away, but something lingered in his chest. An ache, a reminder, a story yet to be revisited. The next morning, Lisa was called into the manager's office. The words were cold and final. "We can't have children sleeping in the hotel. It's against policy." "I'm sorry, Lisa. We'll have to let you go." She didn't fight it. Her hands trembled as she untied her apron. Her gaze fell on Matthew, who watched from the hallway, clutching a drawing he'd made while she worked. A blue sky and a stick figure family. Only 2 people, him and Lisa. She folded the apron, took her son's hand, and walked out with nothing but a plastic bag of his clothes and the weight of every unanswered prayer. That night, She knocked on the door of a tiny house on the outskirts of the city. Her Aunt Emily opened it, arms wide and eyes full of worry. "You can stay here," she said, "as long as you need." Lisa collapsed into her arms, whispering thanks between sobs. If this story touched your heart, maybe you're like us, someone who believes in the power of second chances. Don't let this moment pass. If you're enjoying the journey so far, consider subscribing to our channel. A simple like and a comment below telling us where you're watching from helps more people find these stories of courage, love, and redemption. And if there's a kind of story your heart is longing to hear, write to us. We're listening. And we're here for you. Every day with one more story to believe in. For the next 3 months, Lisa lived like a shadow inside Aunt Emily's modest home. Days blurred into each other. She helped clean houses in the neighborhood while Matthew played with cousins he barely knew. Every night she'd press her ear against the thin walls and cry silently, hoping no one would hear. But children always notice what adults hide. One rainy evening, as thunder cracked through the silence, Matthew slipped into her bed and whispered, "Are we gonna be okay, Mommy?" Lisa hugged him tight, pressing his head into her chest. "Yes, baby. One day we'll have a place of our own. I promise." She didn't know how or when, but the promise felt like oxygen. Her heart beat with it. Meanwhile, back at the Privilege Hotel, Gabriel Hawkins was not himself. He reviewed budgets, oversaw renovations, signed contracts, but his mind wandered. That janitor's eyes haunted him. Not just because she reminded him of his mother, but because she had looked at him without fear. Only exhaustion. He hadn't told anyone, but a week after firing her, he quietly launched an internal investigation. Who had hired her? Why wasn't HR aware of her son? He learned her shifts had been picked up voluntarily. No one had asked her to mop the lobby at 4 a.m. She'd done it to avoid disturbing guests, even though her contract didn't require it. Gabriel didn't like guilt. It was a weak man's burden. But what he felt now wasn't guilt. It was recognition. Something inside her echoed something inside him. And that kind of resonance was dangerous. Late one night, Gabriel drove alone to Emily's neighborhood. He parked across the street and sat in his car for an hour, just watching the lights flicker through the window of the small house. He didn't knock, didn't even get out. He just needed to see her, make sure she was alive, make sure the boy had shoes. The next day, he called a friend at a local nonprofit and made a donation in her name. "No, don't contact her. Just keep the file open in case she shows up," he said. He told himself it was just about closure, a way to balance the books. But his eyes lingered too long on the folder with her name. And that night, he dreamt of a woman running barefoot through a marble corridor, chasing a boy with a crayon. Lisa, unaware of any of this, found a new cleaning job at a retirement home. It paid poorly, but the residents were kind. One of them, Mr. Allen, an 82-year-old war veteran with dementia, took a liking to Matthew. "This little soldier reminds me of my grandson," he'd say, giving Matthew peppermints and stories about the Navy. Lisa started bringing Matthew with her sometimes. No one minded. For the first time in months, she began to laugh again. One afternoon, as she mopped the sunroom, Mr. Allen said, You've got hands that rebuild the world, young lady. She smiled, unsure what to say. Don't waste them, he added. People with hands like yours, they don't belong in the dark. The words hit her deep. That night, she looked at her reflection and didn't see a survivor. She saw a seed. And seeds, no matter how buried, find a way to reach the light. Elsewhere, Gabriel made a decision. He called a private investigator, not to dig into Lisa's past, but to check in on her present. Is she safe? Is the kid okay? The report came back. Lisa worked 14 hours a day, still lived with her aunt, walked Matthew to school every morning, and spent her nights stitching and mending clothes to sell on Etsy. Gabriel stared at the report. She wasn't looking for pity. She was building something from nothing. That kind of resilience was rare and valuable. He wasn't sure if it was business or something else, but he needed to see her again. Not in a hotel, not behind a mop. As a woman, a warrior, a mother. The next Sunday, Lisa and Matthew went to church with Emily. She hadn't been in years. But as the choir sang Amazing Grace, tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't cry because she was broken. She cried because she wasn't anymore. She held Matthew's hand tighter and smiled. After service, a stranger in a tailored coat approached her. "Miss Herman," he asked. "Mr. Hawkins would like to speak with you." Lisa's breath caught. "What?" she whispered. "He's waiting outside. He asked if he could buy you coffee. And maybe offer you something else too. Something that could change your life." Lisa looked down at Matthew, then up at the sky. Maybe some prayers don't echo. Maybe they land right where they're supposed to. Exactly when you're ready. The coffee shop Gabriel chose wasn't lavish. In fact, it was small, quiet, and smelled like cinnamon and rain. Lisa sat across from him, her fingers nervously wrapping around the chipped ceramic mug. He looked different in daylight. Less like a mogul, more like a man who hadn't slept. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know it's strange." Lisa gave a slight nod, her eyes cautious but steady. "You didn't have to fire me like that," she said plainly. Gabriel winced. "I know. And I'm not here to justify it. But I needed to see you. To say I'm sorry. And..." He paused, reached into his coat, and pulled out a folder. "This is a job offer. Not charity. A real position. Administrative coordinator at my foundation. Office hours. Benefits. Daycare." Lisa blinked. "Why me?" she asked. Gabriel leaned forward. "Because you're the kind of person I'd trust with everything. And I've never said that about anyone." Lisa took the folder but didn't open it. "I'm not looking for a savior, Mr. Hawkins." He smiled. "Good. Because I'm not one." There was silence for a moment. Matthew was at a friend's house, and for once, Lisa had space to breathe. "Why now?" she finally asked. Gabriel stared out the window. "Because I kept seeing you everywhere. In every quiet woman in the lobby. In every mother carrying more than she should. You haunted me, Lisa. Not because I pitied you, but because I admired you." His voice softened. "And because when I saw you with that boy, I remembered my own mother. Before the wealth. Before the titles. She had hands like yours." Lisa looked down at her hands. Dry. Calloused. Tired. But capable. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just say yes," he replied. She didn't say yes. Not right away. She took the offer, thanked him, and walked away into the dusk. For 3 days she didn't call. She prayed. She cried. She weighed every risk. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Her whole life, men had taken things from her. What if this one gave something instead? On the 4th day, she returned to the same coffee shop. Gabriel was there, waiting, as if he knew she'd come. "I don't want special treatment," she said, handing him the signed contract. "You won't get any," he replied. "Good." She sat down, and for the first time they didn't talk about survival. They talked about books, about Matthew's drawings, about childhood scars. It wasn't romance. Not yet. But something had cracked open. And it felt like possibility. The job changed everything. Lisa walked into the foundation on her first day, in a blouse she'd sewn herself. People smiled at her, not because they pitied her, but because they respected her. She learned fast, organized faster, and soon Gabriel found himself relying on her more than anyone else. "She's got a mind like a vault," he told his board, "and a heart like a lighthouse." But not everyone was pleased. Rumors spread. Whispers followed. "He's sleeping with a single mom," someone hissed. "It's another charity case he'll tire of." Lisa heard it all. One afternoon, as she left the elevator, she saw a note on her desk. "You don't belong here." For a moment, doubt returned. But then she remembered Mr. Allen's words. "People with hands like yours don't belong in the dark." She crumpled the note and got back to work. But the storm wasn't over. One evening, Lisa found Matthew sitting quietly on the stairs outside the office. "They said bad things about you," he whispered. "At school. About a rich man buying us." Lisa's throat tightened. She knelt beside him. "People fear what they don't understand, baby. But they don't get to define us." That night she called Gabriel. "We need to talk," she said. When they met, she laid it all out. The rumors, the threats, the fears. Gabriel listened, silent and still. Then he said something she didn't expect. "I'll step back. I'll put distance if that's what it takes. But I won't stop believing in you. Even if I never see you again." Lisa looked at him, her voice breaking. "I don't want distance. I want truth. I want this to be clean, real, worth something." And that night, for the first time, they didn't touch. But they saw each other. Fully. And that was more intimate than any kiss. Then came the gala. The foundation's largest event of the year. Lisa didn't want to go, but Gabriel insisted. "Come as my team. Not my guest." She wore a navy blue dress she found in a thrift shop and altered herself. When she walked into the ballroom, silence fell. Even the chandeliers seemed to lean in. Gabriel spotted her from across the room, and for a moment everything else disappeared. He walked over, offered his hand and said, "Shall we?" As they danced, people watched. Whispered. But Lisa no longer cared. She had nothing to hide. Everything to build. And in the middle of that swirling room, she looked up at the man who once fired her, and saw not power, not status, but a partner. Maybe even something more. Just before midnight, Gabriel leaned in and whispered, "I want to show you something." He led her through a corridor, past the kitchens, to a small private room. Inside was a desk, a map, and a blueprint. "It's a new housing project," he said. "For women like you. Led by women like you. I want you to run it." Lisa stared at the plans. Her name was already printed at the top. "You believe I can?" she asked. Gabriel looked at her, eyes steady. "No, I know you can. And not just because of what you survived, but because of what you refused to become." Lisa touched the paper, breath trembling. "Then let's build it," she said. And in that moment, the janitor became the architect. The survivor became the founder. The woman no one saw became impossible to ignore. Lisa's days began to unfold with a new kind of rhythm, one shaped by morning coffee shared with Gabriel, laughter echoing in the apartment as Matthew learned to crawl faster than her heart could keep up, and the quiet blessing of Watson's loyalty, who had found in the boy not just a child to protect, but a soul to adore. Her heart, once fractured by betrayal and grief, was now being stitched together not by grand gestures, but by simple, sacred routines. Every diaper changed, every tiny shirt folded, every tiny footstep in the hallway echoed louder than the voices of her past. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness wasn't a fairy tale reserved for others. Gabriel had proven more than trustworthy. He had slipped into her life with a gentleness that honored her pain and a strength that embraced her vulnerability. Their relationship was not one of fireworks, but of steady fire, a kind of love that warmed rooms and melted the coldest corners of her heart. He would read stories to Matthew at night, his voice deep and calm, as if sealing their new chapter with every word. "This one's for you, champ," he'd whisper, kissing the boy's forehead, not knowing how deeply Lisa's soul trembled each time she saw the way Gabriel looked at the child. Not as a man tolerating what wasn't his, but as one claiming what life had gifted him, fiercely and freely. And in those moments Lisa would fight back tears, not of sorrow, but of a gratitude so vast, it threatened to undo her completely. One evening, Gabriel invited her to dance in the living room while dinner cooked on the stove. The music was old, something from the 80s, and the melody seemed to rewind time itself. Lisa hesitated, laughing nervously, until he pulled her close, her head resting on his chest as they swayed. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he murmured into her hair. And for a second she wasn't. She closed her eyes and let herself belong, to the moment, to the man, to this life that had once seemed unreachable. But deep inside, a quiet unease stirred. A tiny voice whispering that peace, once found, is always at risk. Still she danced. And when the song ended, she held on a little longer than she needed to, as if trying to memorize the feeling, just in case it ever vanished again. Watson began sleeping by Matthew's crib, like a silent guardian. Lisa often found him there, tail wagging softly in the dark, eyes alert. Sometimes he would whine in the middle of the night, not from fear, but as if sensing an approaching storm only he could detect. Lisa brushed it off as instinct, maternal energy echoing through the walls. But the old unease wouldn't leave. She hadn't spoken to anyone about William in weeks, and though the restraining order was still active, something told her that silence didn't mean safety. Yet Gabriel kept telling her, "We're a family now, Lisa. He can't touch you anymore." and she wanted to believe it, desperately. So she repeated those words like a mantra, building walls of hope around herself, praying they would be thick enough to withstand the ghosts of the past. A week passed in peace. Gabriel surprised her with a small necklace, a golden locket with Matthew's photo inside. "For the bravest woman I know," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Lisa wept, not because of the gift, but because someone finally saw her, not just as a mother or a woman healing, but as a human who had fought through darkness and still chose to love. That night, she wrote in her journal for the first time in years. She wrote about joy, about trust, about finally letting go. She even allowed herself to dream again. A wedding in the spring, Matthew throwing flower petals, Watson wearing a tuxedo bow. It was foolish maybe, but for once, foolishness felt holy. Hope felt holy. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Lisa didn't cry herself to sleep. She smiled. Until the next morning. The envelope was plain, the handwriting neat, anonymous. Left at the porter's desk with no return address. Inside, a printed photograph of Matthew, in Gabriel's arms, the two of them laughing under the sun, and a short message clipped to the back. 6 words. What if the truth came out? Lisa's hands trembled. Her throat dried instantly. She looked around, heart racing, as if the sender was still watching. Who had sent this? William. A stranger. A mistake. The walls began to spin, the calm she had fought so hard to build now cracking under the weight of uncertainty. She slipped the photo into her purse and said nothing to Gabriel. But something inside her knew. The past wasn't done with them yet. And this time, it wasn't just her heart at stake. It was everything. Lisa tried to breathe as the days moved forward, pretending that everything was fine. She cooked breakfast like always, folded Matthew's tiny clothes, laughed at Gabriel's jokes, and even sang softly in the kitchen while stirring soup. But beneath that calm exterior, her mind was a battlefield. The photograph haunted her. Not the image itself, that was beautiful, but the threat hidden behind those 6 words. What if the truth came out? What truth? What could possibly be twisted or misunderstood about their story? Had Gabriel hidden something from her? Or was it someone trying to manipulate her, break her resolve, destroy what she had built from the ashes? The possibilities raced through her brain like wildfire, and no matter how hard she tried to dismiss them, doubt had already slipped in, like smoke under a locked door. She couldn't tell Gabriel. Not yet. Not without knowing more. So Lisa began investigating. Quietly, cautiously. She visited the security guard downstairs, asking if he remembered who dropped the envelope. He shrugged, apologetic. Said it was a man in a cap, dark sunglasses, left it in seconds. No camera footage. No witnesses. Nothing. Just a ghost with cruel timing. Lisa began scanning her surroundings constantly. On walks with Matthew, at the supermarket, in the park. She kept her phone close, her purse closer. Every time she heard a shutter click, she'd spin around, eyes searching. The peace was gone, replaced by a silent panic that never slept. And still she said nothing. Not to Gabriel. Not to anyone. Because if it was William, he'd already won by dragging her back into fear. And if it wasn't, well, then she'd unravel alone, quietly, without risking Gabriel's trust. At night, when the house went quiet and Matthew finally fell asleep, she would sit in the dark with the photo, analyzing it like a detective. Gabriel's shirt, her son's position, the park bench behind them. Details she hadn't noticed when the picture was first taken. Then she remembered something strange. That day in the park, a man had been feeding pigeons nearby. She hadn't paid him much attention. But now the image of his shoes, scuffed brown boots, flashed in her mind like a warning light. The same shoes she had seen before years ago, outside a court building. William's shoes. Her blood ran cold. Could it really be him? Had he found them again? She checked his social media. Still deactivated. No news. No sightings. And yet, something in her gut whispered the awful truth. Some monsters don't need to knock on your door. They just slide in through the cracks. One afternoon, Lisa overheard Gabriel on a phone call. He was pacing in the balcony, speaking softly but firmly. "Yes, I've done everything you asked," he said. "But we had a deal." She was never supposed to find out. Her stomach twisted. She froze behind the curtain, unsure whether to run or scream. What deal? What secret? Was it connected to the photograph? To William? She backed away, heart thudding, eyes wide. For the rest of the day, she avoided Gabriel, watching his every move, every word. And yet, when he kissed her forehead and said, "Everything okay, love?" she nodded, forcing a smile so practiced it almost convinced her. But trust, once cracked, rarely returns whole. That night, she dreamed of broken glass, of a house flooding, of Matthew crying and no one coming. She woke drenched in sweat, Watson growling softly at the door. Something was coming. And it wasn't peace. Unable to carry the weight alone, Lisa contacted an old friend, Julia, a journalist who once helped her during her custody battle. "I need you to look into someone," she whispered over the phone. Discreetly. She gave her Gabriel's full name. There was silence on the other end. Then Julia asked, "Are you okay?" Lisa hesitated. "I will be. I just need to know who I'm really living with." Over the next few days, Lisa lived in limbo, pretending, smiling, surviving, while Julia dug into Gabriel's past. And then came the call. Lisa sat down, her hands trembling. "Gabriel isn't who he says he is," Julia said slowly. "There's a sealed record. Something involving a plea deal, testimony, relocation. I'm still digging." Lisa's blood turned to ice. Her world, once rebuilt with careful tenderness, now stood on cracking foundations. Who was the man sleeping beside her each night? And what had he been hiding? Despite the fear, Lisa confronted Gabriel the next evening. She couldn't live in shadows again. "Who are you really?" she asked, holding up the photo. "And who sent this?" Gabriel paled. His body stiffened. He sat down slowly, rubbing his temples. "I was going to tell you," he whispered. "I just didn't know how. I was placed under protection 5 years ago. Witness testimony. I helped put someone dangerous away. The man was connected to William. That's how I met your case. That's why I moved here." Lisa's mouth fell open. Her knees buckled. "So you knew about me before we met?" "Yes," he said, guilt thick in his voice. "But I didn't plan this. I didn't expect to fall in love. I didn't expect Matthew. You were supposed to be just another file. But you became my everything. Lisa's tears came like a storm. Not from betrayal, but from the cruel irony of fate. The man she ran from and the man she ran to were both tied by secrets. And now, with the truth revealed and danger looming once more, Lisa stands at a crossroad. Does she stay and fight beside the man who may have saved her? Or run again, this time with no one to trust but herself? The past has returned. But this time she is not the same woman. She's a mother, a warrior. And maybe, just maybe, the ending of this story won't be written by fear, but by the fire she now carries inside. Because Lisa no longer walks with her head down. She no longer apologizes for breathing. She remembers the girl she once was. Afraid, silenced, trapped. And she sees in the mirror the woman she became. Strong, strategic, ready. Whatever comes next, Lisa knows one thing: she's done hiding. She won't let fear name her future. She won't let shadows raise her sun. And if her past has claws, then so does she. And this time she knows how to fight back. The rain poured relentlessly over Baltimore, as if the heavens themselves wept for the struggles that weighed on Lisa's fragile shoulders. Every drop tapping against the cracked window pane was a reminder of the harsh reality she faced. Still tangled in the web of her past, yet bravely forging a path toward a hopeful future. The room she shared with Matthew in her Aunt Emily's modest home smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness she once felt on those desolate streets. But it was here, in this humble sanctuary, that Lisa found moments of peace amid the chaos. A sanctuary born from resilience and raw courage. Each morning, she rose before dawn, cradling Matthew in one arm and clutching a small bag that held the remnants of her life. Her steps were heavy but determined as she navigated the quiet streets toward the new job Gabriel had offered, a lifeline shining in the distance. The reception desk of the smaller hotel awaited her steady hands and warm smile, yet beneath the surface, she wrestled with the shadows of past abuse and the lingering fear that any moment might shatter their fragile calm. Matthew's innocent laughter was her shield, his bright eyes her beacon. One rainy afternoon, when the city seemed swallowed by gray skies and swollen rivers, Lisa faced the unbearable task of picking up Matthew from the daycare. The power had gone out, leaving streets dark and slick, and every step toward the car was an act of faith. Gabriel appeared like a guardian angel, his sleek black car pulling up beside her just as tears welled in her eyes. Seeing Matthew safe in Gabriel's arms, smiling, was a balm to Lisa's soul. She reached out impulsively, pressing a grateful kiss to Gabriel's cheek, a simple gesture that stirred something deep and unexpected in the hardened man. Behind Gabriel's composed exterior lay memories jagged with pain, nights spent watching his own mother suffer, haunted by a father's rage. It was these scars that sculpted his formidable demeanor, a fortress built not to imprison others but to protect himself. His offer to Lisa to work under his wing, with a promise of daycare and stability, was more than kindness. It was a silent vow born from his own painful past. Yet, he struggled to show the tenderness that stirred quietly beneath the armor. As the days folded into weeks, Lisa and Gabriel's worlds intertwined. Sunday mornings brought shared breakfasts in the warmth of Gabriel's new apartment, light filtering softly through windows, laughter mingling with the aroma of fresh coffee and toasted bread. They walked through parks, Matthew's tiny hand gripping theirs tightly, a symbol of a new family beginning to bloom. Yet, shadows from William's return lurked on the horizon. His threatening letters a dark reminder of the storm still waiting to break. Gabriel stood steadfast beside Lisa when the threats escalated. His presence a shield stronger than any legal protection. Their bond deepened not just in love but in mutual respect and courage. When William's menace finally crumbled beneath the weight of the law, it was Gabriel's unwavering support that carried Lisa through the darkest nights. The past's chains began to fall away, replaced by a future that shimmered with promise. And as the first snow of winter dusted the city, Lisa discovered a new miracle blossoming within her. A child conceived in hope, nurtured in love. The promise of Nicole, a symbol of a love forged through struggle, care, and devotion, filled the room with a gentle light. Gabriel watched her with quiet wonder. His heart no longer a fortress but an open field, ready to embrace the life and love they would build together. The dawn broke gently over Baltimore, casting a soft golden light through the windows of Gabriel's modest apartment, a sanctuary that had become more than just a shelter from the storm. Inside, Lisa sat quietly on the worn couch, her hands resting tenderly over the curve of her belly. The life growing within her was a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience born from the darkest nights. Gabriel watched her from the kitchen doorway, the weight of his past mistakes and silent battles etched into his thoughtful gaze. The man who had once been a fortress of guarded silence had begun to unravel, revealing a heart scarred but capable of deep and tender love. This was no fairy tale. It was the raw, unpredictable beauty of redemption. William, the shadow that had loomed over Lisa's life, had been exposed for what he truly was: an empty shell of cruelty, incapable of love or redemption. The court had dealt the final blow, stripping him of power, and his name became a whisper of a nightmare fading with the dawn. Lisa's fear no longer held dominion over her days, replaced by a fierce determination to claim her future. Gabriel's presence was no longer just a safety net. It had blossomed into partnership, trust, and an unwavering commitment. They had fought battles that tested their souls, and in doing so, built a foundation that neither time nor hardship could erode. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of healing and laughter, a delicate dance between past wounds and present joys. Gabriel learned to speak the language of tenderness, his rough edges softened by the innocence of Matthew's smile and Lisa's gentle touch. He took on the role of protector and provider not out of obligation but from a wellspring of newfound love. Together, they navigated the complex emotions of blending their lives, each step forward a testament to courage and grace. Lisa's gratitude toward Gabriel was boundless, but more than that, she loved him for the man he was becoming, a man who fought not with fists but with heart. Lisa's pregnancy became a symbol of renewal, a divine promise that life's cruelest chapters could lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Every kick, every flutter, was a whispered prayer answered, a miracle nurtured in the warmth of their home. She imagined the future with a vivid clarity, their child growing in a world where love was abundant and fear was banished. Gabriel stood steadfast by her side during every doctor's appointment, his hand steady in hers, offering strength and reassurance. In those moments, the ghosts of their past were held at bay by the simple power of hope and shared dreams. Their love story was not without struggles. There were moments when doubt crept in, when old wounds threatened to reopen. But each time they chose to confront the shadows together, their bond growing stronger with every challenge. Gabriel's redemption was not a sudden transformation but a slow, deliberate shedding of old pain and mistrust. He learned to forgive himself as much as he learned to love Lisa and Matthew. His past no longer defined him. It was the soil from which a new life was growing, a life rich in possibility and forgiveness. Matthew thrived in this new environment, his laughter a constant melody that filled their home with joy. The boy's innocence was a balm for Gabriel's hardened heart, and his connection to Lisa deepened in ways words could never capture. Watching them together, one could see the emergence of a family bound not by blood alone but by the fierce, unbreakable ties of love chosen and nurtured every day. Their story was one of survival but also of triumph, a narrative that would inspire others to believe in second chances and the power of grace. In the quiet evenings, as the city's lights flickered beyond the window, Gabriel would hold Lisa close, whispering promises not just for the present but for a future they were building brick by brick. The baby's impending arrival infused their lives with a sacred urgency. Every decision, every hope centered on the gift they were about to receive. Lisa, once broken and afraid, now shone with a strength that was breathtaking to behold. Her faith, once fragile, had blossomed into an unshakable trust in love and God's providence. Together they faced the horizon, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it united. And so Lisa's story, marked by pain, struggle, and uncertainty, found its crescendo in a new beginning. The villain had been vanquished, the wounds began to heal, and the promise of motherhood wrapped her in a tender embrace. Gabriel, no longer a shadow but a steadfast light, stood beside her as a partner, protector, and love renewed. Their future was unwritten, a blank canvas painted with hope, faith, and the deep knowledge that love, above all, redeems and restores. In the warmth of that winter morning, beneath a sky brushed with hope, Lisa smiled, pregnant, loved, and ready for the life she deserved.